We show onboard computer synchronization.
Now entering the nexus of geekery and guy world. In 3, 2, 1, mark.
Hello, IT? Have you tried turning it off and on again?
This is the Dudes in Hyperspace podcast, a service of Shark Flight Publishing.
Hey kids, welcome back for episode 14 of the Dudes in Hyperspace podcast. I am your host, Ian J. Malone, joined this evening by my good friend, Mr. Scott Esther. Dave's got the night off. Going to check in with Scott here in just a second. But before we do, you know the drill of stuff. We are online at dudesinhyperspace.com. You can also find us via Facebook and Twitter at The Hyper Dudes. You can also email the show anytime at your leisure, as to say, dudesinhyperspace@gmail.com. You know we love hearing from you guys. That's where we get all of our dude mail questions that we do pretty much every week nowadays. That's become a staple. Folks just seem to like it, and honestly, we do too. But we just love hearing from you guys, man. So shoot us up anytime. Again, that's on Facebook and Twitter at The Hyper Dudes, and then via email at dudesinhyperspace@gmail.com. Lots of good stuff to get to tonight. Speaking of the dude mail topics, took a peek through there. We've got stuff on Star Trek Picard. We've got questions about racing season coming up around the corner, Daytona 500 this weekend. Questions about the Marvel Studios footage with Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Loki, WandaVision, all of that good stuff from the Super Bowl. So just pretty much a smorgasbord this evening. So I'm going to hit on all of those things, including the weekend's football, which most years football's over by now. Not this year. 2020 things are a little different. We're going to touch on that in our big headline topic here in just a second. But before we go any further, Brother Esther, welcome, sir, to the great state of North Carolina. Are you moved in?
I am locked and loaded over here.
Nice.
Moved in and just enjoying the much cooler weather that I'm used to from the Tampa Bay area.
So for those not keeping score at home or following on Twitter, Brother Esther and his family made the move to the Triangle Raleigh-Durham area, which is actually where I am here in this last month. So 2020 brings new changes abounding for the Esther folks. And we're happy to have you guys, man. It's going to be great to have a fellow Knoll around the corner for college football season this year, most definitely.
Yes, without a doubt. And we'll probably have to do one of these podcasts live and in person at some point.
Over beverages.
Yes.
Beverages. Yep, no doubt. That will definitely.
For now, we'll just do it beverages on our own time.
All right, so let's go ahead and delve right in, man. Spring football, it's not a new concept. We have seen this before, dating all the way back to the World Football Leagues and NFL Europe. And then I want to say they tried to rebrand NFL Europe into something else. We saw the AAF come out and just absolutely fall flat on its face last year. But then the one that everybody's kind of been waiting for, cynically or not, has been the relaunch of the XFL. We all remember it when it dropped in, I guess it was 2000, 2001. Vince McMahon rolls out with Jerry the King Lawler and Jim Ross calling color commentary, "Welcome to the XFL." And we all snickered, rightfully so, because it was a garbage product. Fast forward the better part of 2 decades, they're going to try this again. And by all rights, it looks like they had far more of a plan heading into this version of the XFL. So opening weekend was this past weekend. We had 4 games featuring all 8 of the league's teams. I had a chance to watch most of I guess it was LA and Houston. I caught bits and pieces of the Tampa Bay game, watched most of the Dallas game after the NASCAR Busch Clash went off, which was a horror fest. So yeah, got a chance to check out quite a bit of it. I've got some thoughts, but Scott, I'm going to let you take the lead on this, man. First impressions, XFL 2.0, you've seen it now. What was the verdict?
Defenders, Roughnecks, and Battlehawks, oh my. Let's take a look at what we got going on here. So I did appreciate that the XFL decided to split up the weekend and give us all 4 games, 2 on Saturday, 2 on Sunday. I think it gave everyone who was curious the opportunity to pick the schedule that was going to fit them. And the times were good, so there's no late games. Everyone was able to stay up and watch all of the games. I know the AAF opened their season, I think, with an 8:30 kickoff. on CBS, and so between ESPN and Fox, these games kicked off at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Second games rolled in right around I think it was the 5 o'clock hour, which to me it made a lot more sense. If you want to get kids involved and you want them to be able to watch, you got to have it while they're awake. You got to be able to watch the games while they're going on.
Yep.
So that was a big departure, and we actually saw that the TV ratings were better this weekend for the XFL than the initial ratings for the AAF. We'll see if those ratings hold as the weekends progress and the season moves on. I wasn't quite sure what to expect from the football. Was it going to be a cross between arena football and the Big 12, where they play no defense? Were the scoreboards going to hit triple digits? Who knew? You just didn't know what to expect. The rule changes were going to try to make this game a little bit more fun to watch, a lot more chances that the coaches could take. So, I was pleasantly surprised with the quality of the football. I thought it was a little bit better than the AAF. To have 8 full teams full of guys that, essentially, we're talking about guys who couldn't make it onto an NFL roster or a practice squad. And so now here they are giving the AAF or the XFL a chance. It was interesting. I think they've got a long way to go to make some of these guys household names, with a lot of star power that we'll want to follow week after week. There were a few notable names from, if you followed college football at all, or you're paying attention to the NFL draft. Guys like Cardell Jones, made their debut. Decent day, not too crazy of a day for him. 235 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, led his team to a win. But I think the DC defenders they had 2 pick sixes, so I can't put too much on Cardell Jones as the guy that won that game for him. But I thought it was interesting. Attendance numbers, those folks live, I think they had on average just around 17.5 in the house for each game. A decent enough crowd to make some noise. You'd like to see that number go up a little bit if you're sitting in the front office for those teams, but a decent showing.
The game to watch for attendance is going to be next weekend's St. Louis game, to see how that city responds to having professional football back in their town. That is the one I'm most interested to see from an attendance standpoint. Dallas, Houston, L.A., you can't get anybody to go to anything in L.A.
Right.
I get it. It's the second biggest television market in the country. Yeah. You kind of have to have a franchise there, but for crying out loud, man. I mean, how many teams are we going to go there and watch play, be it the NFL, the XFL, or whomever, in front of a half-empty stadium because everybody else is off chasing Hollywood movie stars?
Right.
So, but I digress. But St. Louis, it's going to be very interesting to see how that city responds. St. Louis people, I know the rumor has it there are even a few XFL people who may listen to this program. I'm going to go ahead and throw out the name of a guy right now that you need to be looking up on Twitter. His name is Rob Howell. He's a fellow author buddy of mine. He has been on the XFL train pretty much since they announced the schedule and things really started rolling last year. My guy has been beating the drum for this league, particularly for St. Louis, because he lives about an hour from there. He was the first in line to get season tickets, first in line to get swag. He tweets pictures. He uses the hashtags. He's like uber fan of the St. Louis Battlehawks. And from what I understand, that is quite indicative of people in that area. There's a lot of presence in NASCAR from the Missouri area. Kenny Wallace, guys like that. I know Ryan Blaney and a lot of his family's from the Missouri area. So I follow a good bit of those guys on Twitter, and they're excited to have football back in the city of St. Louis. I would also add that for my money, St. Louis had the best looking uniforms in the league. Those helmets are sharp.
Yeah, I mean,
those helmets are bad to the bone. I was looking at them going, It's wild and it's modern, but it's not over the top Oregon Ducks.
Well, we may be pandering to a crowd of one because I do have a former colleague and a buddy of mine who is deeply involved with the St. Louis Battlehawks. I'd love to be able to get him on the program to discuss XFL football, but he is born and bred in St. Louis. He was super excited about this and came up with a number of the marketing campaigns around the team this year. Mm-hmm. But even during the game when they cut away from there to show the bars and some of those other things and reactions to plays in St. Louis, I mean, there was a good crowd at the sports bars that they targeted. And they seem to be into it, for a brand new team, and not knowing how those guys are going to play together. They seem to have drummed up a pretty good fan base. So,
Yeah.
so I was pretty impressed with that.
My overall takeaway from the XFL was if there was ever a spring football league that could make it, this is it. That's not to say that it will. I mean, you nailed it just a second ago when you said, let's see what the television ratings look like as we get toward the end of the season. Right now, everybody's checking it out because they all wanted to see if it was going to fall on its face, frankly.
Right.
And we watched it. I think the vast majority of people walked away from the experience this weekend, walked away from the product going, you know what, that's not half bad. I do think the football was a little sloppy in places, but what brand of football isn't sloppy in week one? I mean, do we remember the Miami-Florida game from week 0 in college football this year and what a crap fest that is? The NFL, I mean, they're equally as bad on week one. And to some degree, a lot of that is a reflection of the changing rules with regard to safety. Guys just aren't allowed to hit much anymore in practice because they're trying to minimize impact. I get that, and that makes sense. The downside of that is your first couple of weeks are going to be a little bit raunchy while guys are knocking the rust off and getting back into game shape.
What did you think of some of the different rule changes and how they were actually implemented? I thought they did a pretty good job of explaining them online with some videos and sort of the how-to of how this was going to work. But until it shows up in live action and you see it play out and the strategies involved in it, I was just kind of curious to how that was going to be implemented. What did you think about the conversion rules, and then 2, the kickoff rule?
That was probably the biggest thing I was waiting to see were the rules. Was this going to be a gimmick or, was it actually going to contribute something to the game? And much to my delight, I would say I think they hit a home run with most of their rule changes. They were not changes for the sake of saying, hey, let's reinvent the wheel. They were changes that made sense. And you nailed this a second ago. They did a great job of rolling this out on social media and kind of educating the fan base on what they were doing. But until you saw it live, you didn't know how it was going to come across. The kickoff being chief among them. I mean, that is a radical change in football kickoff procedure. And to see it play out in an infographic is just not going to do it justice. You had to see that on the field. Now we've seen it in action in 4 games, and I've got to say, you know what, man? I really don't have a problem with it. I think it makes a ton of sense. I think it maintains the integrity, the excitement factor of what a kickoff and a special teams big play can be. But you are eliminating that running, breakneck speed, hard charging, slam right into each other impact that does cause so many concussions and head injuries and neck injuries. This seems to be a really, really well thought out, well conceived compromise to correct that problem. So I liked it a lot. The PATs, I don't know that I would have gone so far as to just get rid of the option to kick a point after a touchdown. If you want to make it interesting, maybe back it up to like the 20 and make it a 40-yard kick for the PAT or a 35, where there's a little bit more at risk. Taking that off the board altogether, I don't know that I would have done that. But I like the injection of strategy that you get with you can go from the 2 and you get a point. You go from the 5 and get 2 points. You can go from the 10, really roll the dice, and maybe even get a 9-point play out of this. That's a huge deal when you start going down to the wire in fourth quarters as these offenses start to find their mettle. I don't think there's any doubt that the Dallas Renegades' offense is going to look drastically different when Landry Jones is under center. Drastically different. We know who Hal Mummy is. We know what kind of system he wants to run. He made Tim Couch the first overall draft pick in the NFL out of Kentucky years ago to the Cleveland Browns, who haven't had a quarterback since. And honestly, Tim Couch was not a very good quarterback either, but I digress. But, that brings me to another point that I think the NFL or the XFL really did a nice job on was they brought in names that you know. So Cardell Jones, you remember him from Ohio State. He won a national championship. Aaron Murray, you remember him from Georgia. Landry Jones, you remember him from Oklahoma. Matt McGloin, you remember him. Down in Knoll Nation, we got Jacques Patrick, we got Tavares McFadden. I watched Kermit Whitfield play ball on Saturday for LA. These are people that we know. I know there's 5 or 6 Hurricanes running out there too. So Dave's guys are represented. There's a lot of familiar faces out there. Tar Heels, Elijah Hood, running back for the I believe it was for Dallas. So there are recognizable names out there from a player and a coach standpoint. Hal Mumme, Norm Chow, Bob Stoops, Jerry Glanville, June Jones. These are names that we as football fans know and know well. They're reputable names of guys. Mark Trestman. You can say all you want about the sweater vest. The guy knows how to coach football. Mm-hmm. So they brought in people who really do know the game and have a quality reputation for being minds of the field. And I think that behooves them. I think that gives their brand credibility. Now, one thing I will say that they've got to knock it off with, and they need to have a real talk with their television partners, especially the clowns at ESPN. Can we please stop reminding people in the television broadcast how many NFL teams cut these players, and that's why they're in the XFL?
Right.
I don't need to hear that. I think his name is Jordan Tamu, the starting kid for St. Louis. I don't need to hear that he was cut by 4 NFL teams. And the last team that he was on, he only lasted 3 days before he got cut from the practice squad. You're doing a disservice to your brand. Focus on the pluses, all right? Focus on the fact that Cardale Jones won a national title with Ohio State. That's what people need to remember him for. Focus on the numbers that Landry Jones put up in Bob Stoops' offense at Oklahoma. Focus on the numbers that Aaron Murray put up at Georgia, although he didn't do jack crap this weekend. They're talking about going to Clinton Flowers from USF, who everybody knows because he was a high flyer under Taggart.
Exactly.
So focus on the good stuff.
I think for this thing to get legs week after week, it's just going to take time. Time for fans to get used to the new rule changes. Time for fans to make those connections like you were just talking about. Oh yeah, Cardale Jones, I do remember him. Oh yeah, Aaron Murray, I do remember him. They are going to have to just take a little time for that. The uniforms, the logos, they're all different. Scoring is a little bit different. So how you think about watching the game and going, okay, well, this isn't a 2-possession game anymore. It's actually just a 1-possession game because the scoring rules are different. How they start to implement the double pass. I didn't see a lot of that this weekend.
Yeah, I was waiting for that too.
Curious to see how over time that starts to be like, okay, the speed of the game is starting to come together for me. I realize that we can start to pull this off. I mean, there were a few sort of razzle-dazzle plays, the flea flicker-esque type plays that one that I remember watching TC run. But it's just time to get this to where it's going to be, and the names will become household if you don't tell everybody that they were also Reds at one point.
Yeah, no doubt. Listen, some guys you're not going to be able to get around that. Everybody knows Josh Johnson as a journeyman quarterback. We remember that,
Right.
But I still think there's a place for this. Some other things I really did like about it. I did like the speed of the game. I think the combination of the 25-second play clock, the 10-minute halftime, and then one thing that I would love for college football and the NFL to adopt, the ball spotting ref. One ref. That's all you do is you run out with the ball and you spot it, and that's it.
Yes.
And the way that lent itself to momentum within the flow of the game, I thought was fantastic. I don't know why that's not done already in the big leagues, but they could take a definite page out of the XFL's book on that one.
Give the NFL a little bit of time because I think they're using this as a little bit of a testing ground for some of those things like that.
Yep.
And then from a production standpoint, we had some insight into the replay officials. So the announcers take a step back, they don't say anything, and then you actually go into the replay booth with the replay official who's having a live conversation with the official on the field, and they're talking about what they're seeing, what they saw on the field, and then what he's seeing up in the booth. I thought that was a pleasant sort of peek behind the curtain as to what goes on during there, because the NFL is, you get nothing.
Yeah.
You have no idea what's going on. You don't know if there's, 3 trained officials up in the booth or a bunch of monkeys pressing buttons. They just don't tell you what's happening in there.
Yep.
So I did like how that was implemented. Mics on the players, mics on the coaches, hearing the play call from the sidelines, going to the quarterback, and then how that quarterback is running the huddle. I thought was an interesting look, especially for folks who, like myself, I never played football, never put a helmet on, never stood in the huddle, never lined up against somebody else to play official football. So for me to be able to hear what goes on in cases like that, I thought was some pretty good insight.
I do think they've got some bugs to work out on the how much audio they want to bring in from live game action. They already got one F-bomb in their first game. One guy walking off the field, they shoved a mic straight in his face after he had just been called for a personal foul. And he says, in not so many words, I've got an effing job to do. And live television, and that was that. And it's like, guys, you're kind of playing with fire there. I can appreciate what you're trying to do. That has always been one thing that I've given NASCAR above any sport. As soon as those guys get out of the car, they've got reporters shoving mics in their faces because the press has that kind of access to those competitors. No other sport does that, but the XFL, it would seem, is trying to implement that, whether it's the interviews with the coaches during the game, on the sidelines, interviewing the players as soon as they sit down on the bench after grabbing a cup of Gatorade. I mean, they're up in some business on those sidelines. To some degree, I thought to a fault. So they need to iron that out. Also, I had one guy on ESPN on, I think it was was it the Dallas game on Sunday? When you had again live mics around a bunch of players and some bombs start flying, and my man's like, "Language, fellas, language." I'm like, dude, you're shoving hot mics in front of players in real time while they're in the heat of battle. You kind of throw that out the window, man. You either have a dump button and you run this thing on a delay, or you get rid of the mics. But you're gonna get what you're gonna get there, okay?
Yeah, I think there was another instance where a reporter went to go ask a player a question after a big play, and he had to get back onto the field.
Yeah,
and it was kind of like, what was going through your head there? And he's like, I gotta go. Like, this is. So I think that there'll be some lessons learned from the sidelines, and hopefully they take those to heart. But overall, it was an enjoyable watch. I wanted to sort of come at it with a fresh mind. Usually around this time of year, I start to have a little bit of that football fatigue. It just ended, Super Bowl, all that kind of stuff, which, it's a long football season between college and the NFL.
Sure.
But I was pleasantly surprised and actually didn't mind flipping on a game between teams that I, didn't have a car in the race for any of the teams, really. Didn't have a rooting interest in any of them, and just thought, let's just see what this is, and if it'd be worth checking out in weeks to come, which I probably will be.
Yeah, no, I plan on keeping an eye on it myself. I announced my allegiance to the Dallas Renegades on social media this weekend, so I'm all in. I told my wife if she's looking for an early birthday present, maybe a little Dallas Renegades ball cap action. I'm a fan of the ball cap, so maybe that'll be in the works. But yeah, I'll be checking it out as well. There were a couple of players in here that were fun to watch again. I enjoyed watching this PJ Walker kid at Houston. He was a gunslinger. He's a short little guy, but a lot of fun. 4 touchdown passes. He was winging it all over the place, made a couple of nice throws. Cardell Jones, we've covered him ad nauseum. I am very much looking forward to seeing what Landry Jones can do once he gets under center in Hal Mummy's offense in Dallas. I think that's going to be full-blown air raid, so that'll be fun.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I'm very interested to see how this all pans out and how it evolves through the course of the year. I'd be remiss if I didn't say one thing that I really love about this league. And listen, much has been made about the NFL and the last decade, really, of what it has become and some of the controversies that it's found itself embroiled in, and player controversies and league decisions, and whether Roger Goodell is or isn't an idiot. There has been a fair amount of negative press about the NFL these last number of years. One thing, though, that I cannot stand about the NFL, and this is just me personally, I cannot believe how astronomically expensive it is now to go to an NFL game. I mean, you were just down in Tampa Bay. What does it cost you now if you wanted to get 3 tickets to a Bucks game? All right, you and 2 kids. Let's say you want to make it a family affair, 4 tickets to a Bucks game. By the time you figure nosebleed tickets, parking, concessions, that's going to be what, a $600 day?
Yeah, it's beyond my meager means at the moment to do something like that. That's but again, you're getting the in-stadium experience, which could be hit or miss. You've got weather to deal with. You've got other fans sitting around you that you've got to deal with. Nothing worse than showing up to a football game and having the guy next to you being completely overserved, and
Yeah.
could ruin the experience for you and your family if he's not able to keep his mouth shut. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Like I said, 17,000 people on average were showing up for these
Yeah.
games, and
Well, flip the script and you can get season tickets for $100. That's $20.
Right.
It's $20
Yeah.
a ticket. That's what Rob paid. $20 a ticket for season tickets to the St. Louis Battlehawks, and that's pretty well the going rate for all of these teams. I love that, and it would be great to be able to pay $20 a ticket to roll out and go see guys that I watched in college play football again.
right.
Heck yeah, I'll support that. Throw me in some minor league types of deals where I can get a Coke and a dog and some chips or whatever for, $5-8 a pop for me and the kids and whatever. Yeah, I'm all about being able to support that. And it seems like we have that in just about every other form of sport, whether it's minor league baseball. Now that you're here in the Triangle, you got the Carolinas, the Mud Hens, Mudcats, something like that. Mudcats. And then I got the Durham Bulls over here where I'm at. Minor league racing is all over this state and all over this region, whether it's Orange County Speedway or Wake County Speedway or Bowman Gray or VIR or whatever. You can go to a race for, 15, 10, $20. I mean, depending on what you want to go see. There are, smaller end basketball leagues that you can go be a part of, whether it's the NBA DL or whether it's summer leagues. There's minor league hockey if you live in an area with an East Coast Hockey League or something to that effect. About the only thing you've had historically for some time for minor league football is arena football. And there are a lot of reasons not to like the arena brand. Sorry, arena fans, but I've just kind of it's always been kind of that, want to talk about leagues that are just purely gimmicks? That's the arena football league for me. The arena product is just one giant gimmick, and just doesn't do anything for me. But now you actually have a viable professional football league with quote unquote name brand players and coaches whom you know and have known for years that you can go see, you can go support for $20 a ticket, maybe $5 a beer, $8 a beer, grab yourself a burger. You get in and out of there with a family of 4 for $100. I mean, really, you can't go to the movies hardly for that anymore. So that is, and I can only imagine that it's probably going to be the same thing for sponsors. For sponsors who are looking to get into the professional football realm but can't afford the high ticket price of an NFL sponsorship, well, now the XFL is here to serve you. And I will be interested to see what kind of turnout they get. There were definitely some name brands that have already locked onto that league just from watching some of their spots this week. So they're getting interest from corporate America, which is a good thing.
Well, at the you're going to get your television sponsors, and if the ratings hold up, they'll continue to show up, and you'll start to see some of those national brands. But at the local level too, to your point about affordability, the ability for a local brand to get into a market like LA or New York, where the Giants and all the LA teams and those the football properties there are charging 7 figures just to walk in the door for sponsorship deals and the like. You're going to get the opportunity to get in front of sports fans and families at a football game in those markets. So that'll be interesting to see. As we look to the future of the XFL, let's say that their success continues. They have a good year this year. What are your thoughts on them expanding to more markets in 2021, or do you think they should wait to 2022 to solidify the league and put them in a good place to really be able to expand?
I don't think going ahead and recruiting cities to sign on board now is a bad thing. Give them a good 2 years to launch. So, let's say, the end of this year, you have 2 new markets that decide we want to become teams 9 and 10 in the XFL. Give them 2 years to set up their operations, to get settled, to get their front office staff in line, get their general manager in line, get a coach in line, get your talent evaluators lined up and ready to go for senior bowls and the like, so that you can hit the ball running. Because again, to me, the biggest success story of the XFL this weekend was the fact that there was clearly a plan in place for this launch. Whether it's Oliver Luck or whether it's whomever, all the way down to your owners and your general managers, these guys had a clear vision for what this league was going to be as an entity and as a brand and as an on-the-field product. They knew this is who we are going to be, and we will see if it works. We will see if fans embrace it, but there will be there's no gimmick to this. We have a plan. And I think you keep that philosophy in every aspect of what you do. Franchises being a great a great example of that. As far as markets go, I mean, let's just go ahead and say they expanded 2 cities. We'll call it in 2022. Where would General Manager Esther or President Esther like to plant a couple of franchises around this great nation of ours? Or would you go outside? Maybe Toronto, Toronto, Mexico, something like that.
I think a couple places would be good choices for me. San Diego, they just lost their NFL franchise, so there's no football there. Only Major League Baseball is in the area, so as far as competition is concerned, that's about all you've got. I would think that similar to the city of St. Louis, who sort of had their NFL team shuffled in and out, San Diego might be a good place to get some local support and a rally around them. Plus, we're talking spring football. And while the weather was nice this weekend for all 4 games,
right?
San Diego's probably pretty nice this time of years
right.
compared to some places up north. So you've got that to factor in. I'm sure the powers that be that are looking at this are taking a look at media markets, where some of those media dollars are going to come from. So a city like Chicago could be one that would be on the short list of markets that would take an additional team. But I would think top of my list would probably be San Diego.
Yeah, I'll give you one from the heart and then one kind of from the heart, but I think actually makes a bit more sense. From the heart would be the Research Triangle area, Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill of North Carolina. It would be very easy to say Charlotte. Charlotte's where you got to be. But Raleigh-Durham is a huge community. There is a tax title and all, I want to say, between Raleigh-Durham, Chapel Hill, and everything in between, from Holly Springs to Knightdale to Hillsboro to you name it. It's more like 2 million people. All right, so we got no shortage of fan base here. You've got your choice of places to play, whether it's Carter Finley, which is right in downtown Raleigh. So logistically, a lot to offer there. Raleigh is very high right now on their train station. They're trying to promote a lot of interstate transit on the trains, whether it's just heading down the track to Charlotte. A lot of these business execs that do business between the 2 cities don't drive, don't battle the traffic, just hop on the train. We'll get you there. They run, I want to say it's 4 trains per day exclusively between Raleigh and Charlotte. They go to Richmond. They go down the road to Charleston. They go to Greensboro, pretty much anywhere in the state of North Carolina. So, you can tap into all of those fan bases. And the Panthers have tried to do that. They have run ticket packages for Raleigh fans in particular, Triangle fans, where you get an $80 ticket to the Panthers and round trip on the train for $25. We'll get you there. We'll even have a shuttle waiting at the train station to take you to the ball field where you can tailgate. So I think Raleigh-Durham could make a lot of sense. There's a lot of stuff happening in downtown Raleigh, whether it's the Dix Park project that's going on, again, the train station. You've got a great airport in Raleigh-Durham. You've got hotels galore. It could make a lot of sense. I think the downside to Raleigh-Durham is it's such a transient population. You run into a lot of the same problems that you do in the Tampa-St. Pete market, which is, hey, we're all fine to root for the Buccaneers, or we're all fine to root for the Rays until the Yankees show up, because, we're from Brooklyn and we were raised on the Yankees and we're always going to root for the Yankees no matter what. You're going to find a lot of that here because we have such a transient population. You'll have people who will be loyal to the team until such time as their real team comes to town. But with a startup league like the XFL, there's no allegiances, so maybe you make it stick. The other city that I would throw out as a possibility, and I know I beat the drum for these guys all the time, but now probably more so than ever, and that would be Jacksonville, Florida. Again, you get back to climate. Right now in Jacksonville, you're in the 50s, 60s? Maybe 70 during the day. So get some sunshine out there. It's beautiful there this time of year. You've got big time airport, hotels galore, so no problem getting in and out of there if you're traveling in from out of town. You've got a market that eats, sleeps, drinks, lives, breathes football, and they're pretty pissed off with their NFL franchise right now. And frankly, I don't blame them. In case you missed that in the news, it was announced this last week, I think it was, when they rolled out the NFL schedules, that Jacksonville is sending not 1 but 2 dates, back-to-back home game dates, to London. That's 2 less teams that the people in Duval County get to support their team. So that's got a lot of fans canceling season tickets, beyond the fact that the team's just butt awful and has been pretty much forever. A lot of people not liking the Jags. Now roll down there with the XFL in the spring, give them some $20 tickets and a team that really does want to be there, while Vince McMahon gets to thumb his nose at the owner of AEW, who calls Jacksonville home, that being the Cons. And Jacksonville makes a lot of sense for the XFL. So get yourself a Gator quarterback in there and whatnot, and they'll be happy, and they would support that team. So Raleigh-Durham, Jacksonville, Florida. Those would be my 2 pitches. Then, of course,
are you trying to say that Gators are going to turn out XFL caliber quarterbacks?
Who's to say, man? You know what? I don't. Kyle Trask may be a ringer for the XFL. That's what I know.
All right, well.
Emory Jones, on the other hand, might have some skills. I'm interested
true.
to see what he's going to be, but no, I don't think very highly. I think Trask is another Felipe Franks, but that's another talk for another day. But yeah, so those are my picks: Jacksonville, Raleigh-Durham. From the heart, it is what it is, but hey, it's a fun podcast, so we're allowed to do that.
There you go.
So, all right, closing thoughts on the XFL. Anything else that you think they ought to do moving forward? Parting shots? Anything before we move on to Dude Mill?
No, I think we covered most of it. Like I said, overall, I'd give it a B minus. Between the football and the production values and everything else, they got some things to work on, and let's see what they've got here in the coming weeks.
Yep, I'm pretty well the same boat. I'm going to give it a solid B, mostly for the television aspect. Again, I'm inclined to give them a little bit of a pass on the sloppiness of the on-field product at times, because that's pretty much every brand of football in week 1. So they'll get that ironed out over time. And again, when you got guys like Bob Stoops and Mark Trestman out there running these things, they kind of know things about the game of football. It's been pretty well established that they know how to coach. So in time, they will give you a quality product. I'm not too worried about that. The broadcast end of things, I definitely think they need some work on. ESPN more so than Fox. Fox's broadcast I thought was infinitely better than ESPN's coverage of the league. But yeah, I'll give them a good solid B. So all righty, with that, we will shift gears to the Dude Mail. Here we go.
You've got mail.
Okay, first question comes to us from Tom. Hey dudes, I'll admit to having been a little skeptical about a new Picard series, especially given Sir Patrick Stewart's age these days. However, having now seen all 3 of the series' first trio of episodes, I've got to admit to being completely and totally hooked. Have you guys watched the series, and if so, what are your thoughts? Scott, you were never a big Trek guy, were you? Have you had a chance to check this out?
No, I haven't seen this yet. Although, anytime a storied franchise like this gets another run, it sort of piques my interest and makes me want to go back and catch up on some things. But I have not had a chance to take a look at Picard yet.
Okay, I have. I grew up on Star Trek Next Generation. That's my era of Star Trek. I've seen them all. I watched TNG, I watched DS9, I watched Voyager, I even watched Enterprise. I haven't really been able to get into Discovery. That wasn't quite my bag, nor really were the Abrams films, but it is what it is. But for every seat, as they say. This, on the other hand, has been, I got to throw in with Tom. I've been very, very, very impressed with this. It feels like the next incarnation of Star Trek The Next Generation, but it's not Star Trek TNG. It is its own thing. And we heard coming into this series that Patrick Stewart walked into the meet out of a courtesy. He was going to show up in person to be able to turn these people down face to face because he felt like that was the way it needed to be handled. And when they pitched him on their vision for what this show was going to be, he said instead, I want to hear more. And so they sent him some scripts. He read it and said, I want to do this. I never thought I would come back to the character of Jean-Luc Picard. And Lord knows he doesn't need to. He's got all the career accolades. He's got more money than he knows what to do with at age 79. He's fine. But he saw something in this story that made him want to come back to this universe and to this character. And now 3 episodes in, we're really seeing what that is. It's been a great story so far. It's taken some hard knocks for some people in terms of the vision of what Starfleet is in this show. It is very different than the Starfleet we grew up with. It's a lot more cynical. It's a lot darker. But I think there are reasons behind that. And I think it serves the story. There's going dark for dark's sake, which is like what every DC Comics movie tries to be now, which is why most of them flop, just like Birds of Prey did this weekend. But then there's serving a story with a darker element and putting a darker twist on something for the sake of the story. These guys nailed it with Picard. Stewart has been phenomenal. The opening score alone is worth tuning in for. It's so very Star Trek, but it's so fresh. It's been a great show. So, Tom, I'm with you, man. I've got it. I'm loving it, and I'll be watching as soon as I get home from work on Thursday afternoon to episode 4. So, okay, next question comes from Russ. Racing season is back, gentlemen. Time to fire up those engines and those opinions. Would either of you care to give your picks for the Daytona 500? And while you're at it, throw me out a dark horse. So, Scott, you actually attended the Daytona 500 last year, did you not?
I did. It was my first ever NASCAR racing event live. And, I was pretty impressed with the entire spectacle. I had always, you hear it called the Super Bowl of motorsports. And I think the beginning of that gets glossed over in the gravity that it holds. It is quite honestly a spectacle to behold. And I was impressed from start to finish.
You got any picks for this weekend, or are you going to stand down?
You know what? I've always been a Ryan Newman guy, so I'd love to be able to see him show up and make some noise in the 500 this year. But not sure how well he'll do. But he's always a guy that I like to pay attention to.
Ryan Newman is actually a very trendy pick. He had quite a comeback season, if you will, last year driving for Jack Roush in the 6 car. Ryan Newman is widely regarded as a guy who's going to get you everything that the car is capable of getting. And that was exactly what Roush needed last year. Roush Fenway, for those baseball fans keeping score at home. But he came to the 6 and he brought them a stability for that team that they had not had in quite some time. So he is a trendy dark horse pick, actually, for the Daytona 500. He was racy this past weekend in the Busch Clash and may have some things to say before it's all over said and done. So
it's always been it's been my understanding that he's been more of the great engineer, like you said, gets every last ounce of horsepower and aerodynamics out of the cars that he puts on the track.
Oh yeah,
but
he's got he's got an engineering degree from Purdue.
Yes,
he's a total brainiac.
Which is pretty much why my father went to Purdue. So if I had to pick a NASCAR driver, he was the one that sort of stood out for me. But I guess the knock on him is that his driver skills behind the wheel may not be up to par with some of the other guys. And that's where he might, lose a little bit out on the track.
He's got some talent. He's a former Daytona 500 champion, so he knows how to win. You put a car under him, and he will drive it to the front. The big thing on Newman that a lot of people don't like is he doesn't get out of the way for anybody. All right, he could be 2 laps down, and he's not going to get out of your way. And there's an etiquette factor there that kind of rub a lot of people the wrong way. It's kind of like letting people play through on a golf course. But anyway, so yep, Ryan Newman, he is the thing. So picks for this weekend. I mean, you never know at these tracks. You're sitting there watching, and I don't know, Kurt Busch is dominating the race, or Kyle Busch is dominating the race, and then all of a sudden the outside line catches a head of steam with a lap to go. 12 cars line up, pile drive the field. Winner, beats Kyle Busch back to the line by half a second. It can happen just that quick at these tracks. It's all about drafting. It's all about the car, frankly. So, with that, you never really know. That said, I'll go ahead. If I'm going to pick a favorite this weekend, I'll throw Bones in with Brad Keselowski in the 2. Seems like they've been pretty solid so far during speed weeks. They look good in the Busch Clash before he got wrecked out by his own teammate. He had a great interview on that, by the way. I retweeted it, so go watch that. It was most colorful, as only Brad Keselowski can do. But Brad's been solid this week, so I'm going to go ahead and take him as my favorite. As far as dark horse goes, I'm going to dig back, and I guess this maybe isn't quite so much for reach, but I'm going to go with Ricky Stenhouse Jr. It's a guy that got fired from Roush Fenway Racing last year from the 17. He is now driving the 47, which is a mid-tier quality cup ride, but he does have some power under him, and he's a guy with a lot to prove. He actually took the pole for this week's race. So we'll see how that pans out. But Ricky Stenhouse Jr. is my dark horse. Next question comes to us from Ashley. One of the highlights of this year's Super Bowl for me, outside of the fact that the New England Patriots were nowhere to be found on the field, was the unveiling of Marvel Studios footage for Falcon and the Winter Soldier, WandaVision, and Loki. What did you guys think of the footage, and which of these series are you most excited for? I'm probably going to go with Loki. On the on the most excited meter, I think anytime you've got Tom Hiddleston playing Loki, you've got a good dadgum day. Guy's awesome. He's a great actor. He was made to play that part. He pretty much steals the show anytime he's in a scene with anybody, whether it's Hemsworth or whomever. He's a ringer. I mean, Marvel has had some great casting. Marvel's pretty well done a great job casting most of their characters. But there are the elite few that are a cut above. And by those, I mean Chris Evans, Robert Downey Jr. I'm going to very much put Tom Hiddleston in that role. I literally can't envision anybody else but him playing the character of Loki. Interested to see where they go with WandaVision. I hear that's going to be quite different than what we would expect. I also like Scarlet Witch a lot. Out of the Marvel females, she's the most underserved for me. I'll be honest, I couldn't care less about a Black Widow movie. I've seen Scarlett Johansson in that role now for over a decade. I've got her story over the course of 12 years. I don't need a standalone story for her. Scarlet Witch, on the other hand, not so much. You didn't meet her until Age of Ultron. She's obviously showed up and been a big part of the Avengers since, but I think there's a lot of story there left to tell with her, and I love Bettany as Vision. So that's kind of my thought on that. Scott, what'd you think? Did you see the footage, and if so, which of the series you stoked about?
I think I'll be right there with you on the Loki part of it. I think Tom's a great actor. He plays that role incredibly well. Can't really imagine anyone else in that role, which is a sign of a good actor. I think the WandaVision trailer, the portion of the trailer specifically, I was a little confused by that. Not sure where. I didn't know anything about what was going on. And then, that trailer shows up. I was even more confused about where they're going to take that series and what they're going to do with it. So in that regard, I'm intrigued, but still kind of unclear about the direction that's going to go. I do like the actors that play both those parts, and looking forward to seeing what comes out of it. And then Falcon and the Winter Soldier was the action trailer that I thought it was going to be. Seeing Cap's shield come into new hands and how he works that out, and guys falling from the sky. There's gunshots, all kinds of stuff. It's going to be a thrill ride, which I don't think anyone expected anything different. So looking forward to that as well.
Last question comes to us from Glenn. Last weekend I cracked up in Freebird Rising while on vacation and am thoroughly enjoying it. Thank you for that, Glenn. I'm glad to hear you like the book. What are you guys reading right now, and can you make any recommendations for when I'm done with this one? Scott, you reading any books right now?
So I am into a couple books by Mark Manson. Okay. The Subtle Art of Not Giving Up, and we'll keep this thing PG. And then his second book, which is Everything is is also something that I'm interested in going through. I've got the audiobook on the first one of those, and about halfway through that one. So it's a good little read. A couple self-help, self-reflection, ways to work on yourself to get yourself better every day type of thing. That's what I got going on right now in the book world.
Cool. Yeah, I am about finished with Kevin Eikenberry's Sleeper Protocol, which is a good one. It's kind of a post-apocalyptic Jason Bourne kind of story. I don't really know how to describe it. This guy who's a American soldier wakes up 300 years in the future and has to figure out why it is that A, he's back, and B, what the heck happened to the world in the last 300 years that he's been gone. So good characters, definitely a good, fast-paced, upbeat story, as Kevin Eikenberry has a knack for being able to write. So good friend of the program there, but good book, that Sleeper Protocol. After that, I'm actually going to shift out of sci-fi for a round or two, and I'm reading Marty Smith's book, Marty Smith of ESPN. I've known Marty for years, not personally, but I remember him from way back in the day when he was the man at NASCAR.com. When NASCAR was at its heyday in 2002, 2003, 2004, he was pretty well the go-to guy for commentary and news on NASCAR.com. And even bounced a few emails with him. He fielded my questions and whatnot, and I gave him crap for being a Virginia Tech grad because we had just smoked them in the Sugar Bowl in '99, I guess it was. And so anyway, but super, super nice guy. Obviously, for people who follow him now on ESPN, he's got a lot of personality. He is just a good old country boy from Virginia who just so happens to run around the country or run around the world now covering sports just for the heck of it and telling stories. That's very much the brand of what Marty Smith is now. So he put out an autobiography, I guess, the last couple of months. Eric Church, country singer, wrote the foreword for it. and it pretty well tells the story of his career and everything he's learned along the way. So you can bet there's going to be a lot of good anecdotes and stuff like that in there, and I'm just kind of excited to cracking into that. So anyway,
Nice.
that is what I'm reading now. And that, good sir, will take us down to White Flag. Here we go.
White flag.
Okay, White Flag, as everybody knows by now, is the segment where we kind of look ahead into the next few weeks or next month or so and just kind of tell folks what's on our radar. Can be geek stuff, can be sports stuff, can be pretty much whatever the heck we want it to be. That is the joy of this segment. So, White Flag, Brother Esther, what are you looking forward to in the next couple of weeks?
Well, it's interesting. My daughter, who's in middle school, has started their history section on World War II. So we've got some talk of some history and World War II stuff going on, and we just happened to be cruising through the old Disney Plus, and or actually, I think it was Netflix, and saw Indiana Jones and the
Nice.
and there was some interest there to watch that with the kids, and so it's right about the right time for them to be introduced to some of those things about when I was introduced to it at that age, similar to that. So we're going to start cranking up the Indiana Jones and go through the series, and we're going to talk about the good and we're going to talk about the bad, but feeling pretty good about parent choices and my parenting skills about getting them involved in some of the classics.
You got to do the right thing. You stop at Crusade. Don't
Yes.
waste your time with Crystal Skull. That movie does not exist. It was never made. It never happened. It's not.
No,
it's not.
I totally
This
agree.
is not the Indiana Jones you were looking for,
That's true.
and neither will
So,
the fifth one be if they ever try and make that piece of crap.
So we'll, like I said, we went through and watched the first 3 Star Wars movies, and I got them introduced to them too. Even though those never existed in some people's pantheons of movies, but we're gonna check out some Indiana Jones here with the kids and see what the thoughts are there. I've got obviously the ACC basketball March Madness coming up from the sports angle. Loving everything that's going on there with the Knowles, and hopefully we can watch a pretty fun run here into spring with the old basketball. And then finally, it is time for pitchers and catchers to report, spring training to get started, and for the crack of the bat and the smack of cowhide hitting leather. Looking forward to it.
'Tis the season, and now you're in town. We'll hook up some minor league baseball.
You better believe it.
Without a
We'll be catching some games.
Nice. Yes, I too am ecstatic about the return of baseball season. I was just online today getting ready to re-up my my MLB at Bat app subscription so I can get all my radio broadcasts.
Excellent.
Man, it's going to be different listening to the Cincinnati Reds this season without Marty Brenneman on the call.
You better believe
Like,
it.
that is going to be. Now, I do like Tommy Thrall. He's a Pensacola boy. Or at least he spent a good
Certainly.
bit of time down there with the Blue Wahoos. But anyway, that'll be strange. Neither here nor there. Nobody cares about that but me. That's okay. And all the folks of Red Lake Nation. But I digress.
There you go.
So yeah, pitchers and catchers report. That's a good time. Things are going to be cranking up in spring training here just shortly around the bend. As noted earlier, we are about to kick off the 2020 NASCAR season with Daytona 500 this weekend. I'm always excited when racing season comes around. I'm a racing guy, so that's always a blast for me. In a lot of respects, though, this year is the year that everybody kind of wants to get through so we can see what next year is going to be. Next year, NASCAR is projected to have some pretty radical changes with their schedule. They're going to roll out an all-new car. It has yet to be decided yet whether they're going to roll out a brand-new engine package to go with the brand-new car or whether that's going to come the next year after in 2022. A lot of seats expected to change hands. A lot of older guys in their 40s or so expected to start to transition out starting this year. So you're going to see some new faces, new places, and you're going to see a lot of that in NASCAR next year. A lot of those announcements, though, are going to start coming down this year in the 2020 season. So going to be a big year on NASCAR land, and I'm going to be interested to see how a lot of those stories play out. On the geek side of things, Star Trek Picard, without a doubt, is the biggest thing on my radar right now. I thought I would enjoy it anytime I can get Patrick Stewart playing Sir Jean-Luc Picard. I'm happy, but when it's this good, I'm really happy. So interested to see where they're going to take that story. They've already brought back some familiar faces in the form of Hugh, who was a Borg. We've obviously seen Brent Spinner in some cameos. They've showed us in the trailers that we're going to get at least one scene with Riker and Deanna Troi, so I'm excited to see that happen. But all in all, it's just been a fun series. So Major League Baseball, the return of NASCAR, and Star Trek Picard. Those are my white flag topics. And with
Excellent.
that, we get ready to draw this episode to a close. Thank you to you, the fine listeners of this particular radio program, for listening in. As always, if you do enjoy this program, and we hope that you do, we think that you do, we pray that you do, we do, however, ask that you leave ratings to demonstrate said love for said program. Any place you can do that. Apple Podcasts, Google Play Music, wherever at Stitcher, wherever it'll let you leave 5 stars in a review. We really, really appreciate it when you do that. Before I get out of here, folks who listen to this program because you enjoy my writing, I've had lots of questions about Detroit City Vice, which is the new book that I've been working on. You've been hearing about it on social media. People want to know what the story is on that. Big announcement from Ian J. Malone Bookland coming this weekend on Facebook Live. Stay tuned to me on social media. I'll brief you on everything you're going to need to know, but I will tease you with this little morsel, and that is that the announcement has to do with a lot more than just Detroit City Vice. It's a big announcement for me. So again, that's going to be happening this weekend on Facebook Live. Follow me on Facebook and Twitter at Ian J. Malone. I'll get you all of that stuff. You can always follow us as well at The Hyper Dudes. Email the show, dudesinhyperspace@gmail.com. Booyah! That's a segue. And with that, ladies and gents, we are going to bid you a good night and go watch some Knowles, hopefully smoke the Blue Devils right here in Durham, North Carolina. You guys have a great night. We'll talk to you soon. Peace.
Yep. Take care.